Welcome to Not Into the State with me, National Core. In today's episode, we want to discuss the affordable housing agenda by the government of Kenya, and also the housing levy. I will try and tie the two together and just try to understand the agenda of the government to do affordable housing and the plans that they have. Illustrate for you the concerns that I have with the finance bills in relation to the construction sector, and also look at the government affordable housing agenda, whether it will succeed or not. We discussed this, I think, in a previous episode, but it would be good to ventilate on it again, as I said, in the context of the housing, of the finance bill that has been passed by government. Now, let me prosecute first the concerns I have with the Finance Bill 2023 and my issues with it in the context of the construction industry. There are certain concerns that personally I feel are going to negatively affect the construction sector, and I want to discuss what are these concerns, and then we'll discuss the housing levy and the affordable housing at some point in this discussion. Now, there's been a big debate about the Finance Bill 2023, and I mean, we've had a very robust debate about this Finance Bill that is now enacted. Now, what issues do I have with the housing levy? And I'm going to talk in the context of the construction sector. First of all, my concern is on the 10% taxation on imported materials. There is an attempt to put this like we want to build local capacity, which honestly, it would be foolish if someone to say we don't want to build local capacity. I am for local capacity. It's a good thing. But the thing is, we are in the construction industry that has a ballooning cost of construction. All right? The ballooning cost of construction. Our cost of construction is growing, and even with the importation that we've been having, and no one wants to import materials that are cheaper locally. There's nobody does that. People import because it is cheaper to import than to buy local. So when you force people to buy local, what you simply mean is that you're forcing the cost of construction to go up. I mean, there's no two way around it. The reason we go to buy tiles, wherever we go to buy them in China, in Dubai, in Italy, is because those tiles are cheaper in those nations. Those tiles are cheaper in those countries than they are local. So if you force us to buy local by putting a levy on imported materials, then you're definitely telling us the cost of construction is going to go up. Because if I was going to buy a tile outside there and save money, you're now forcing me to buy local because there's an importation levy you have slapped the imported materials with. Then definitely I'll go local as you want, but then my cost of construction is going to go up. That is one of my key issues I have with the finance bill. Because the construction sector, I think in my estimation, imports almost 70% of materials. We import nearly everything of the construction industry. And with that importation, which we import to save, still look at the cost of construction. It's still up. All right? So we are importing nearly everything in the construction sector. And I don't think we're going to stop importing because of this levy. What is going to happen is because people are in business, people build for commercial purposes, people build to sell, to rent, the cost of the housing, the cost of construction is just going to go up. And when it goes up, developers will simply pass them to the buyer, to the tenant. There's no other way. So the finance bill is increasing the cost of construction. There is no way you can sugarcoat that. If by just that levy alone, the cost of construction in this country is going to go up. All right? So when you slap the cost of, you put a tax on importation, the 10% tax, I think it's called importation and investment or something. that cost we're going to pass it over to the user, the end user. So we expect to see housing prices still going up because developers are in business. He will accommodate all the cost and pass it to the end user. There's no other way around it. All right? And we import a lot of things. We import all tiles. You will expect it when you increase you slap a tax on importation cost, then there will be an initiative to lower the cost of production locally. Because one of the key problems we have in this country is our production cost is very high. If a manufacturer of tile, from putting the tile in, raw materials to when the tiles goes out, and it calculates its taxes and everything, you'll find that the sale price of that tile locally is quite high. And that's why people are forced to go outside. Because real estate has become so competitive. It's become so tight. It's become a buyer's market. All right? So developers are looking for ways of how do they reduce the cost of construction and remain competitive? What advantage can they exploit to lower cost of construction and lower sale prices so that they can beat their next door neighbor? That's the competition now. Now, by simply slapping this 10% taxation on imported materials, the government has raised the cost of construction. And when you look at it in the terms of the government is still in the business of one of the agendas of doing affordable housing, then you find that there is no coherence. There is incoherent policy statements. That is, for me, is one of my biggest problems. Number two issue that I have with finance bill is on clinker. They have slapped another 10% taxation on clinker. Now, let's discuss this. Clinker, we have a 40% deficit on clinker in this country. 40% deficit. And of that 40%, we usually import 60% from Egypt. So we have 40% deficit, and then we import 60% of that 40% from Egypt. All right? Are we going to increase capacity for clinker overnight? We will not. It's not possible. Unfortunately, it's not possible. So what is going to happen in the meantime? Because the issue here, the proponents of this says, no, we have capacity to produce enough clinker locally. I don't want to agree or disagree, but my concern is, up to a few months ago, we had a deficit of 40%. Are we going to achieve that deficit within a month, 2 months, 3 months? The answer is no. It will take some time before we realize that deficit that has been there in clinker. That is the truth. So while it could be a good initiative, my suggestion was we will have had a moratorium period on this taxation on clinker. We'll have said yes, we have capacity to produce clinker locally, and in that scenario we will impose a taxation on clinker, imported clinker, but we give it a moratorium for almost 6 months. So let it start in January 2024, so that within 6 months the local companies that intend to produce more clinker can have opportunity to realize that capacity and then impose the taxation on clinker. That's more realistic for me. That is more realistic for me. But when you want to impose it to start in July, when very well that even the people that intend to realize that deficit of 40% will not realize it in a month, you're going to raise the cost of cement. Clinker is a key component in cement production. So what are we saying? Again, the cost of construction will go up. Cement is at the threshold of any construction structure in this country and globally for that matter. So the 10% taxation on clinker, it may be good in terms of inviting local production of clinker. The best approach will have been to delay it for even 6 months. Have a moratorium period on that taxation. What was the hurry? So that the companies that produce clinker, and I know there are 2 companies that are intending to produce clinker, give them 6 months to build those plants and realize all those things. And once we've realized that, look, now we have a capacity to produce enough clinker for our market, probably even enough to export, then slap that 10% taxation on imported clinker. That will make sense. That will make sense. But that is not the case what is being done here. We want to put a taxation on clinker from July. And this clinker debate is going to get more interesting because I think there are about 2 companies that produce clinker. I know there's intention of 2 others to get into that production forum. But I was wondering how rival cement companies will buy clinker from their rivals, from their competitor. So competitor A, B, so you have 4 companies, A, B, C, and D. So A and B produces clinker. D does not. They're all producing cement. So D has been importing cement from wherever it is, Egypt, wherever it is they've been importing from. But now D, because importation of clinker is becoming expensive, D is being forced to buy clinker from A, who is their cement competitor. Of course, they will sell for them expensively so that they can drive them out of market. And with the time, we'll create monopoly of these clinker manufacturers. You'll have 1 or 2 players only producing clinker. And then they begin to manufacture those pricing of clinker. We will drive this clinker cost up. That is going to happen. Because when we will have 1 or 2 people capacity to produce clinker, and the cost of the importation of that clinker again is expensive, they will collude to drive prices up. Those for me are my concerns with this taxation of clinker. Cement is at the threshold of any industrializing company. Kenya is industrializing. We are growing. Even by definition of a third world company, we are a growing company. There is no better growth of infrastructure than clinker, than cement. It's at the center of it. The cost of cement being lowered should be a priority for a government that wants to achieve affordable housing. And I do not think you're going to lower it with monopolies of companies that probably are driven by vested interest in government to remove their rivals from the market. That is not how we achieve affordability. So clinker cost, taxation on clinker cost is another concern I have for finance bill. I've talked about the cost of importation. And by the way, if you look at cumulatively, you will find almost a 30% tax increase in this environment, of built environment. So I've talked about the cost of slapping every imported construction material 10%, and then there's another 10% on clinker. Number 3 is the fuel levy. And look, we are an industry that relies heavily on machinery. Look at the roads, the infrastructures. When you increase the fuel levy from VAT from 8 to 60%, you're increasing the cost of construction. It's basic sense. So that's another concern we have. And it's not even the direct cost of construction. There's even the cost of manufacturing construction material is going to go up. All right? Even those things that you want to produce locally, that you want it to be cheaper, by just increasing fuel levy, you're going to increase the cost of production, which they will pass to the construction sector. What are we talking about again? So from the construction equipments that do excavations and the levelings and the compactions of the roads of every development, there's always a machine involved. Transportation cost is big in the construction sector and real estate sector. Fuel levy, the revised VAT from 8 to 16% is going to directly impact the cost of construction. And not just that, even the cost of manufacturing, which affects manufacturing construction materials, your nails, the hinges, all right? So while you are blocking the importation of some of these things that would have been inevitably cheaper and lower cost of construction, you've slapped that taxation again, and again you are increasing the cost of production, the cost of manufacturing. We are building up a big problem in terms of cost of construction. And these taxations also come from the backdrop that in January, we increased the capital gain tax from 5 to 15%. Just January this year. The capital gain tax increased from 5 to 15%. And look at what happened. I saw a report the other day that because of that, revenue from CGT, capital gain tax, fell by 13% in the first quarter of this year. So, and some of us wonder about this, that when you increase capital gain tax, then you are essentially hindering people from investing in property. They will not sell, they will not buy. Those who want to buy will not, those who want to sell, they will not sell, because there's what we call the lock-on effect. Yeah, while I was paying 5% in December of 2022, by January I was paying 15%. That alone, the percentage that I'm going to lose 15% to government will make people not to sell property or even invest in property. And we raised this fundamentally when this tax was being tripled. And look at the effect, 30% drop in revenue. Again, just point to you necessarily that it's not just when you increase taxation that you will get the revenue. Sometimes over taxations on perception of taxations, when people feel it's too much, will actually lower the revenue because people start to avoid it. People don't want to get involved in it. So there's a negative effect in terms of getting the revenue you wanted by increased taxation. And we're talking about this on the backdrop that the construction sector last year suffered serious in terms of growth. Yeah, in fact, I can give you the statistics. It's here. The sector growth declined from 6.7% in 2021 to 4.1% in 2022. Right? So last year we had a what? A 2.6% growth decline in the construction sector. 2.6%. 2.6%. And of course, this country elections, we fold up. All sectors, especially, just fold up. Now, we expected that in this year, there will be that attempt by the government to take it a notch higher. Yeah, boost the built environment, boost the construction sector, let it go up. We are talking about people saying, "Oh, we want to create jobs, But and the same last year, if you look at the construction input inflation, rose from 3.4% in 2021 to 7.1% in 2022. It's the cost of input inflation, the cost of materials. 2021, 3.4%. 2021 December. 2022 December, 7.1%. Yeah, we suffered a lot last year from cost inflation of construction inputs. Of course, the steel was ridiculous, the Ukraine war, the steel issues and all those cement issues. And one of the problems again was the clinker. But again now, instead of helping the built environment to now try to recover after the biggest slash last year of growth, again, we are slapping it with a lot of taxation. It's already a limping industry and we are beating it up with a lot of taxation. It's going to be a problem. It's looking very gloomy for us in this year. Very gloomy. Yeah? So, those are my main issues with the finance bill. Main issue finance bill. How's 10% importation on investment. We've slapped the built environment with, you're telling us, don't import. All right? There's a 10% taxation on importation. Slapped totally. And on an industry that imports nearly 70% of its material, and not willingly. As I said, we do not import materials because we like it. The reason why people go to import is because it's cheaper. You want to lower the cost of construction. By increasing taxation there, of course, if you'll find it still cheaper to import, you will slap that 10% taxation and pass it on to the consumer. Then we had the clinker cost, the clinker taxation, 10% again. Again, I have a big problem with that. There should have been a moratorium on that taxation. You should allow a 6-month period for that capacity to be realized, deficit to be realized, and then begin to bump up that cost on taxation on clinker. So you'll have gone for another 6 months until January probably. All right? Then number 3 is the fuel levy. The fuel levy, for me, is the most ridiculous thing we've done. It's going to inevitably adversely increase the construction cost. And it's going to be instant. Yeah? It's going to be instant. Construction relies heavily on transportation, on machinery. Manufacturers are going to bump up this cost, pass it over to the construction sector. So, yes, I understand that there is need for taxation, and the government must be encouraged to tax people. That I understand how much. That much I get. All right? But some of these taxes don't make sense when you have an agenda of trying to spur an industry, build affordably. That's my concern. When you are in the business of making people have an agenda of affordability, this, as I said to you, the construction sector is limping, literally limping, with a 2.6% growth decline last year. What is it that we've done this year that's going to spark growth? What is it? Someone need to show me that. What taxation, what incentive is there in the finance bill that is going to spark growth this year? I don't see any. We are halfway through this year, and already there's a taxation issues we are facing through the finance bill. We're going to be in problems. And research has shown that the construction industry growth is very tight, joined at the hip with the country's economic growth. If we keep bumping, if we keep hitting this industry with a lot of taxation the way we are doing, you're going to run into problems, a serious problem in terms of economic growth. So those are my issues with finance bill. I have nothing personal against finance bill, but those three taxation areas are a big concern for me. And unfortunately, they have all passed. Now is what we wait to see. We've raised issues on it before. We raised so many concerns before it was discussed. Government has gone away with it. Let's now buckle up. What waits for us ahead is something that we'll all have to buckle up. For the construction sector, it doesn't look good. It's extremely gloomy.